I stared at the white envelope in my hands, the gold-embossed letters of MIT gleaming under the fluorescent lights of my dorm room. After 4 grueling years, I'd done it, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science. My trembling fingers traced the edge of the diploma, a tangible reminder of countless all-nighters, the endless cups of coffee, and the feeling of my eyes burning from staring at code for too long. This should have been my moment, my time to shine, to finally step out of Rachel's shadow. The familiar ping of my phone interrupted my thoughts. Mom's name flashed across the screen, and I felt the usual mix of hope and dread. Maybe this time, she'd call to congratulate me, to tell me she was proud. I took a deep breath and answered. "Robin, I've been trying to reach you all morning. Did you see the news?" "No. Hello. No congratulations. I should have known better. Hi, Mom. What news?" I tried to keep the disappointment from my voice. "Rachel got accepted to her MBA program at Harvard. Full scholarship. Can you believe it? Your father and I are over the moon. We're throwing her a surprise party next weekend when you both come home. Don't spoil it for her." I closed my eyes, the familiar ache in my chest growing heavier. Of course, Rachel had accomplished something incredible, again. And as always, my achievements would be relegated to a footnote in the story of the Golden Twin. That's great, Mom. I'm happy for her." The words felt like sandpaper in my throat. "Actually, I have some news too." "Oh, honey, can we catch up later? I need to call the caterer. This party needs to be perfect for Rachel. You know how important this is for her future. Love you." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, then at my diploma, and felt something inside me crack. 22 years of being the invisible twin, the constant comparison, the overlooked one, despite everything I'd achieved. And now, even on my graduation day, nothing had changed. My roommate Lydia found me an hour later, sitting on the floor surrounded by the remnants of my diploma frame. I'd accidentally dropped, hit, and the glass had shattered. Somehow it felt symbolic. "Whoa, what happened here?" She carefully stepped over the glass shards. "Robin, are you okay?" I looked up at her, suddenly aware of the tears streaming down my face. "My sister got a full ride to Harvard." Lydia's face softened with understanding. She knew all about Rachel, about my parents' blatant favoritism, about the lifetime of feeling second best. She sat down beside me, avoiding the glass. "And let me guess, your mom called to tell you about it on your graduation day, without even acknowledging that you're graduating summa cum laude from MIT on a full scholarship." I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. That's some next-level parental cluelessness. Lydia shook her head. "Have you told them about NextShare yet?" NextShare was my baby, my creation. A file-sharing app I developed during my junior year that had unexpectedly taken off. A tech startup had bought it 6 months ago for $2 million. I hadn't told my parents yet. Part of me wanted to see if they'd notice my accomplishment without the price tag attached. No, I keep waiting for the right moment. But I trailed off, wiping my face with the sleeve of my MIT sweatshirt. "But you're waiting for them to care about what you've achieved without knowing you're a millionaire." Lydia finished my thought, with her usual bluntness. "Is that pathetic?" I asked, looking at the broken glass around me. "No, it's human. But Robin, at some point, you need to stop seeking validation from people who aren't equipped to give it." She stood and grabbed a dustpan from under the sink. "Let me help you clean this up, then we're going to celebrate your graduation properly. The Dixon twins got their parents' attention last week by getting arrested for public intoxication, so McCarthy's pub should be relatively quiet tonight." I laughed despite myself. Always looking on the bright side. "Someone has to," she started, sweeping up the glass. "And by the way, I got you something." Lydia pulled a small box from her pocket and handed it to me. Inside was a silver bracelet with a simple inscription: "Code your own path." For the second time that day, I felt tears well up, but these were different. Lid, it's perfect. I know. She grinned. Now, are we going to let your family drama ruin your graduation night? Or are we going to go out and celebrate the fact that you're a summa cum laude MIT graduate who sold an app for $2 million before you even entered the real world? I looked down at the bracelet, then at the MIT diploma lying amid the broken glass. 4 years of hard work, of proving myself, of building something valuable. 4 years of becoming someone I was proud to be, regardless of whether my parents noticed. Let's celebrate, I said, slipping the bracelet onto my wrist. But first, let me book my flight home for next weekend. I've got a surprise party to attend. The flight from Boston to Chicago felt longer than usual, each mile bringing me closer to the familiar pattern of disappointment that awaited me at home. I'd spent the week since graduation battling with myself. Part of me wanted to skip Rachel's party altogether, to spare myself the inevitable comparison and invisibility. But another part, the part that still desperately hoped for my parents' approval, couldn't stay away. As the plane began its descent, I stared out the window at the sprawling cityscape below. Chicago had never felt like home to me, not really. Home was the cramped dorm room I'd shared with Lydia, the computer lab where I'd spent countless nights coding until my vision blurred, the small coffee shop where I'd first sketched out the idea for next share on a napkin. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Can't wait to see you. Flight land on time?" Despite everything, I smiled. Rachel wasn't the villain in this story. She'd never asked for our parents' preferential treatment, had never flaunted it. If anything, she tried to include me, to pull me into the spotlight with her. It wasn't her fault that our parents had decided long ago which twin deserved their attention. Just landing. See you soon. I texted back, then added, "Congrats on Harvard, by the way. That's huge." Her response was immediate. "Thanks. Mom's been insufferable about it. Fair warning." I chuckled. At least Rachel saw through our mother's excessive pride, even if she benefited from it. The airport was crowded with summer travelers, but I spotted my father immediately, his tall frame and salt and pepper hair standing out in the sea of people. He was holding a sign that read, "Welcome home, girls," with a Harvard logo prominently displayed in the corner. No MIT logo, of course. I swallowed my irritation and plastered on a smile. "Dad!" I called, waving as I approached. His face lit up, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Then I realized he was looking past me, at someone behind me. I turned to see Rachel walking toward us, her smile wide and confident. We might be identical twins, but over the years, we'd worked hard to distinguish ourselves. She wore her hair, long and straight, while I kept mine in a short, practical bob. She favored designer clothes and perfect makeup. I lived in jeans and hoodies with barely a trace of mascara most days. "There are my girls," Dad exclaimed, pulling Rachel into a bear hug first, then offering me a briefer embrace. "How were your flights?" "Fine," we answered in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. Some twin habits never died, no matter how different we became. The drive home was filled with questions about Rachel's plans for Harvard, her scholarship, her future career prospects. I sat in the back seat, watching the familiar neighborhoods, pass by, offering appropriate noises of interest when required. "And what about you, Robin?" Dad finally asked, as if suddenly remembering I was there. "How was graduation? Your mother said you didn't send many pictures." "It was good," I said, the massive understatement sitting heavy on my tongue. "The ceremony was long, but it was nice to finally be done." "I bet," he nodded, then immediately turned back to Rachel. "So, tell me more about this professor you're hoping to work with at Harvard." I turned to look out the window, my reflection, staring back at me with resigned eyes. This was exactly what I'd expected, so why did it still hurt so much? Our childhood home looked exactly as it always had, the perfectly maintained colonial with its manicured lawn and the swing set in the backyard that Dad had never gotten around to dismantling, even though Rachel and I had outgrown it 15 years ago. Mom was waiting at the door, her arms outstretched, her face alight with excitement. "My brilliant girls are home," she cried, embracing Rachel first, always Rachel first, then me. Inside, I was greeted by a house transformed for celebration. A banner reading, "Congratulations, Rachel," hung across the living room. Harvard pennants and balloons in crimson and white decorated every surface. In the dining room, I could see the table set for a feast, with a cake in Harvard colors as the centerpiece. "Surprise," Mom exclaimed, watching Rachel's face for her reaction. Rachel looked genuinely shocked, then a bit embarrassed. Her eyes met mine with an apologetic glance. "Mom, this is a lot. Nothing is too much for my Harvard-bound daughter." Mom beamed, then seemed to notice me fully for the first time. "Oh, Robin, how was MIT? Did you get your grades?" "I graduated summa cum laude," I said quietly, the highest academic honor, reduced to an afterthought in this house. "That's nice, dear. Rachel got the department award for her thesis, you know." Mom guided Rachel toward the living room, pointing out all the special touches she'd added to the decorations. I stood in the entryway, my suitcase still in hand, feeling like a visitor in my own home. Dad patted my shoulder awkwardly as he passed. "You can put your stuff in your old room. We've kept it just as you left it." Unlike Rachel's room, which I knew had been redecorated twice since we'd left for college, I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The hallway was a gallery of our lives, or rather, of Rachel's life, with a few token photos of me scattered among the showcased achievements. Rachel's high school valedictorian speech, Rachel winning the state tennis championship, Rachel at prom, crowned queen, the twins on their 16th birthday, one of the few photos where we shared the frame equally. My old bedroom was indeed exactly as I'd left it. The same faded blue walls, the same twin bed with its worn quilt, the same desk where I'd spent hours learning to code on a second-hand laptop, while Rachel received a top-of-the-line MacBook for her journalism projects. The only new addition was a thin layer of dust, suggesting the room was rarely entered, let alone cleaned, for my homecoming. I set my suitcase on the bed and took a deep breath. Just a weekend, I reminded myself. I could survive a weekend of being the invisible twin. I'd had 22 years of practice after all. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. Landed safely in the realm of parental indifference? I smiled despite myself. Safely landed, currently seeking shelter in my untouched teenage bedroom while Hurricane Rachel sweeps through downstairs. "Hang in there. Remember, you're a millionaire tech genius. They're just people who couldn't figure out how to update their Facebook settings without your help." Her message made me laugh out loud, the sound echoing in the quiet room. She was right, of course. I had built something valuable, something entirely mine. I had a future planned that didn't depend on my parents' approval or attention. But as I heard the laughter floating up from downstairs, the voices of extended family members arriving for Rachel's surprise party, I couldn't help but wonder what it would feel like, just once, to be the daughter my parents celebrated. I changed into a simple black dress, nothing fancy, but appropriate for a family gathering, and steeled myself for the evening ahead. As I reached for the doorknob, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from Nexus Tech, the company that had purchased my app. They were offering me a job, not just any job, but a senior developer position with a 6-figure salary, stock options, and creative control over my next project. I stared at the email, a slow smile spreading across my face. While my parents were celebrating Rachel's acceptance to business school, real businesses were fighting to hire me. The irony wasn't lost on me. With renewed confidence, I slipped my phone into my pocket and headed downstairs to join the party, where I was, at best, a supporting character in my sister's story. The living room was packed with familiar faces, aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who had watched Rachel and me grow up. As I entered, I caught fragments of conversations, all centered around Rachel and her Harvard scholarship. Just like her mother, destined for greatness. The Thompson intelligence clearly runs strong in that one. Harvard! Can you imagine? And with a full ride. No one noticed me slip into the room, taking a spot near the window where I could observe without being observed. It was a skill I'd perfected over the years, being present but invisible, there but not seen. I watched as Rachel worked the room, graciously accepting congratulations, deflecting excessive praise with self-deprecating humor. She was good at this, comfortable in the spotlight in a way I never had been. Uncle Jim was the first to spot me. "Robin, there you are." He made his way over, drink in hand. "How's life treating you? Still playing with computers?" I forced a smile. "Something like that. I just graduated from MIT." "MIT, right. Your mother mentioned you were at some technical school. Not quite Harvard, but still respectable." He chuckled, clearly thinking he was paying me a compliment. "So, what's next? It's support somewhere? Good money in that, I hear." Before I could respond, Aunt Paula joined us. "Robin, dear, we were just saying how wonderful it is that both Thompson girls are so accomplished. Your sister at Harvard and you, well, you were always the quiet one, weren't you?" I nodded politely, the familiar knot forming in my stomach. "Excuse me, I think I need a drink." I retreated to the kitchen, finding momentary solace in the empty room. I leaned against the counter, eyes closed, trying to center myself. I'd known it would be like this. Why had I expected anything different? Hiding already? I opened my eyes to see Rachel standing in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of wine. She handed one to me and clinked her glass against mine. "Congratulations on Harvard," I said, taking a sip. "Congratulations on MIT," she replied, her smile genuine. "Summa cum laude, right? That's incredible, Robin." I shrugged. "Not as incredible as Harvard, apparently." Rachel's face fell slightly. "I'm sorry about—" She gestured vaguely towards the living room. "All of this. Mom went overboard, as usual." "As usual when it comes to you," I couldn't help adding. Rachel sighed, leaning against the counter beside me. "I know. It's not fair. It never has been." We stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the party a distant hum. "Have you told them about your app yet?" Rachel asked. Unlike the rest of my family, Rachel had actually shown interest in my work, had asked questions, had even tested early versions of NextShare before it launched. No. Why not? I swirled the wine in my glass, watching it catch the light. Part of me wanted to see if they'd be proud of me without knowing about the money, I admitted. "Stupid, right?" Rachel shook her head. "Not stupid, human." She glanced towards the living room, then back at me. "But maybe it's time to stop waiting for them to notice what's right in front of them." "What do you mean?" A mischievous smile spread across her face. "I mean, why not make an announcement? It's a party. After all, celebrations shouldn't be limited to one twin." The thought sent a rush of both anxiety and exhilaration through me. I couldn't. Why not? "You've achieved something amazing, Robin. You deserve recognition." I hesitated. "But it's your party." Rachel rolled her eyes. "It's a party my parents threw for me without asking if I wanted one. Trust me, I'd be thrilled to share the spotlight." She squeezed my arm. "Besides, watching Mom's face when she realizes she's been fawning over the wrong daughter's accomplishments? Priceless." I laughed, the tension in my chest easing slightly. "You're terrible. I'm practical, and I'm tired of watching you shrink yourself to fit into the box they've put you in." She finished her wine in one gulp and set the glass down decisively. "Come on, let's go make some waves." Before I could protest further, Rachel took my hand and pulled me back into the living room, straight to the center where our parents were chatting with Mom's best friend, Susan. "Mom, Dad," Rachel announced, her voice carrying across the room. "I think Robin has some news to share." All eyes turned to me, and I felt the familiar urge to disappear. But Rachel's hand was warm in mine, her presence beside me a reminder that at least one person in this house believed in me. I cleared my throat, finding my voice. I wanted to share that I've accepted a position at Nexus Tech in San Francisco. Mom's smile was polite, but distracted. That's nice, dear. Is that an IT company? It's one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country, I said, my confidence growing. They're the ones who bought my app, NextShare, 6 months ago. Dad's eyebrows rose slightly. They bought your app? For how much? And there it was, the question that would finally make them see me. I took a deep breath. $2 million. The room fell silent. Mom's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Around us, relatives and friends stared in shock. $2 million? Mom finally stammered. I nodded, unable to suppress a small, vindictive thrill at their stunned expressions. Plus stock options, and now they've offered me a senior developer position with a starting salary of $150,000. But you never said anything, Mom protested, as if I'd somehow deceived her by succeeding without her knowledge. I tried to tell you, I said quietly, several times, but there was always something more important going on. I glanced meaningfully at the Harvard decorations surrounding us. Dad stepped forward, his expression morphing from shock to calculation. $2 million, he repeated, as if testing how the words felt in his mouth. Robin, that's incredible. We had no idea you were so successful. The emphasis on the last word made it clear what mattered to him. Not that I'd created something innovative, not that I'd built something from scratch with my own skills and determination. Just that I'd made money. A lot of money. Well, now you know, I said, suddenly feeling exhausted by the whole charade. We should celebrate, Mom declared, her entire demeanor transforming. Susan, pour Robin a drink. Jim, where's your camera? We need photos of our tech genius daughter. As quick as that, the spotlight swung from Rachel to me, but it felt hollow, tainted. They weren't proud of me. They were proud of the number attached to my name. If I'd sold my app for $20,000, would they have reacted the same way? Rachel squeezed my hand in solidarity before releasing it. Congratulations again, sis, she whispered. You deserve this recognition. But as relatives swarmed around me asking detailed questions about money they'd never bothered to ask about my work, I wasn't sure this was the recognition I'd been seeking all these years. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. For the first time in my life, I was the center of attention in my parents' home. Mom suddenly remembered that she'd always known I had a special gift with computers. Dad proudly told everyone how he'd encouraged my interest in technology from an early age. Relatives who'd overlooked me for years suddenly discovered that I was the smart twin, as if Rachel wasn't equally intelligent in her own right. Through it all, I smiled and nodded and answered questions, but a growing sense of disillusionment settled over me. This wasn't validation, it was opportunism. They didn't see me. They saw dollar signs. By the time the last guest left, close to midnight, I was emotionally drained. I helped Rachel clear dishes from the living room, working in companionable silence while our parents continued to buzz with excitement in the kitchen, already planning how to redecorate my bedroom and telling everyone they knew about their daughter, the tech millionaire. Are you okay? Rachel asked quietly, stacking plates. I considered lying, then decided against it. No. Yes. I don't know. I set down the glasses I was carrying. I finally got what I wanted, their attention, their pride. So why does it feel so empty? Rachel's expression was sympathetic. Because you wanted them to value you for who you are, not what you're worth. Exactly. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. All these years, I've been killing myself trying to make them notice me, trying to earn their approval. And it turns out all I needed was a 7-figure bank account. At least now you know, Rachel said, sitting beside me. And knowing is better than hoping, isn't it? I nodded slowly. I think I'm done hoping they'll see me for me. I think I need to accept that they are who they are, and that's not going to change. And who are you going to be? Rachel asked, her voice gentle. I twisted the bracelet Lydia had given me, the words, "Code your own path," catching the light. Someone who doesn't need their validation anymore. I looked up at my sister, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I'm moving to San Francisco next month. I don't think I'll be coming back here much. I'll miss you, Rachel said, and I could see in her eyes that she meant it. Despite the competition our parents had fostered between us, Rachel had always been my ally, my friend. I'll miss you too, but you can visit whenever you want. I managed a genuine smile. I've got plenty of room in my new place. Millionaire? Remember? Rachel laughed, the sound breaking the somber mood. How could I forget? It's all anyone's going to talk about in this family for the next decade. As if on cue, Mom bustled into the living room, her face flushed with excitement. Robin, I've been thinking, your father and I could help you invest that money. Your Uncle Jim knows a fantastic financial advisor who could... I've already taken care of it, Mom, I interrupted gently. I have a financial team at Nexus Tech who've set everything up. Her face fell slightly. Oh, well, that's good. Very responsible. She brightened again. We should have a proper celebration for you tomorrow. Just the family. I'll cook your favorite meal. I couldn't remember the last time Mom had cooked specifically for me or even asked what my favorite meal was. That sounds nice, I said, knowing it was easier than arguing. As Mom left to plan her newest celebration, Rachel and I exchanged glances. She doesn't even know what your favorite food is, does she? Rachel asked. Not a clue, I confirmed. Guess they'll have to get to know me all over again. The real me, not just the dollar amount. But as I climbed the stairs to my dusty, unchanged bedroom later that night, I wondered if they would bother once the novelty of my newfound wealth wore off. And more importantly, I wondered if I would still care either way. The next morning, I woke to the unfamiliar sound of activity outside my bedroom door. Voices, footsteps, the vacuum cleaner, all at an hour when the house was usually quiet. I checked my phone. 7:30 a.m., early, especially after last night's party. A tentative knock on my door was followed by my mother's voice. Robin, are you awake, dear? I've brought you some coffee. I sat up in bed, disoriented by this unexpected attention. Come in? Mom entered, carrying a tray with coffee, toast, and a small vase containing a single rose. She'd never brought me breakfast in bed before, not even when I was sick. Good morning, sunshine, she said brightly, setting the tray on my bedside. Table. I thought you might like a little something before breakfast. I'm making pancakes, your favorite. Pancakes were Rachel's favorite, not mine. I preferred waffles, but I didn't correct her. Thanks, Mom, I said instead, reaching for the coffee. What's with all the noise? Oh, your father and I decided it was high time we refreshed your room a bit. She glanced around the space critically. It's so dated. Not at all suitable for a successful young businesswoman like yourself. We're thinking fresh paint, new furniture, maybe even knocking out that wall to expand the space. I nearly choked on my coffee. Mom, I'm only here for the weekend, and I'm moving to San Francisco next month. Her smile faltered only slightly. Well, yes, but you'll want a nice place to come home to for visits, won't you? Besides, it's the least we can do now that we know how successful you've become. There it was again, that emphasis on my financial success rather than any other aspect of my achievements. I set down the coffee cup, my appetite gone. Actually, Mom, I don't need you to remodel my room. What I need is for you and Dad to understand that my worth isn't tied to how much money I have. Mom's smile became fixed. Of course we know that, dear. We've always been proud of you. Have you? I couldn't stop the question from escaping. Because From where I sit, you've spent my entire life focusing on Rachel while barely noticing me. That's not true, Mom protested, but her eyes slid away from mine. We've always treated you girls equally. I gestured around the unchanged room. Really? Because Rachel's room has been redecorated twice since we left for college. Mine still has the same faded posters from high school. Well, Rachel was home more often, and because you made her feel welcome, I interrupted. You celebrated her achievements. You called her regularly. You showed interest in her life. Mom's face flushed. We called you, too. To talk about Rachel, I corrected. Or to ask me to help with the computer, or to fix Dad's email. Never to just talk to me, to ask about my work, my life. That's not fair, Robin. We've always supported both of you. You paid for Rachel's entire college education. I got a scholarship to MIT. And do you know what you said when I told you? That's nice, dear. Did you hear Rachel made the dean's list again? Mom sat down heavily on the edge of my bed, her expression troubled. I didn't realize you felt this way. How could you not realize? I asked, my voice breaking slightly. I've been trying to get your attention my entire life. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT, one of the most prestigious technical universities in the world, and you barely acknowledged it. But the minute you found out I sold an app for $2 million, suddenly I'm your successful daughter. Worth noticing. Mom was quiet for a long moment, her hands fidgeting in her lap. We've always been proud of you, Robin, she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. It's just that Rachel was always more visible. You were so independent, so self-sufficient. You never seemed to need our attention the way she did. Everyone needs attention, Mom. Everyone needs to feel valued. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the emotions churning inside me. The difference is, Rachel demanded it, and I kept hoping. You'd offer it freely. That was my mistake. Mom looked genuinely distressed now. Robin, I had no idea you felt so overlooked. If we've made you feel less important than your sister, I'm truly sorry. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever received from my mother, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. But then she continued, We can make it up to you now. Your father and I have been talking, and we think we should help you manage your money. Maybe invest in property here in Chicago, so you have roots close to home. And we could introduce you to some nice young men from good families. Now that you're established, it's time to think about settling down. And just like that, the hope withered. They still didn't see me. They saw a successful daughter they could brag about, a financial resource they could access, a project they could manage. Mom, I said carefully, setting the tray aside and standing up. I appreciate the thought, but I don't need your help managing my life or my money. What I needed was your support and attention when I was growing up, when I was struggling to find my place in the world. I needed you to be as interested in my coding projects as you were in Rachel's tennis matches. I needed you to put my MIT acceptance letter on the fridge alongside Rachel's Harvard brochures. Mom's expression shifted from contrition to defensiveness. Well, I can't change the past, can I? I'm trying to be supportive now. No, you're trying to insert yourself into my success now that it's financially significant. There's a difference. I moved to my suitcase, pulling out clothes for the day. I think I'm going to head back to Boston early. I have a lot to do before my move. But we're having a special dinner tonight, just for you, Mom protested. Your father invited his colleagues from the firm to meet you. To show me off, she meant. To brag about their newly discovered successful daughter. I'm not a trophy to be displayed, Mom, I said quietly. I'm a person who spent her entire life feeling invisible in her own family. And now that I finally have your attention, I realize it's not the kind of attention I want. Mom stood, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I think you're being very ungrateful, Robin. We're trying to celebrate you, and you're throwing it back in our faces. No, Mom. You're trying to celebrate what I've achieved, not who I am. There's a difference. I gathered my toiletries. I'll be downstairs in 20 minutes. I'd appreciate it if you could ask Dad to drive me to the airport. After she left, slamming the door behind her, I sat on the edge of my bed and let the tears come. Not for the lost chance at a relationship with my parents. I was beginning to accept that might never happen on the terms I needed, but for the little girl who had spent so many years hoping, trying, and being disappointed. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Heard the fight. You okay? I wiped my eyes. Yes. Booking. A flight back to Boston. Sorry to bail on your weekend. Don't apologize, I get it. For what it's worth, I think you're right. Her support meant more than she could know. Thanks. I'll call you later. I finished packing quickly, erasing all traces of my brief return. As I zipped my suitcase, I realized I was closing more than just a bag. I was closing a chapter of my life, the chapter where I defined my worth through my parents' approval. Downstairs, I found Dad waiting by the front door, car keys in hand. His expression a mix of concern and confusion. Your mother says you want to leave, he said as I approached. Yes, I think it's for the best. He sighed heavily. Robin, I know we haven't always been the most attentive parents, but we do love you, both of you. I know you do, Dad, in your way. I managed a small smile. But loving someone and seeing them for who they are, those are different things. And you don't think we see you? His question seemed genuinely puzzled. I think you're seeing what you want to see? A successful daughter you can brag about, not the person I actually am. That's not fair, isn't it? Yesterday, before you knew about the money, you barely asked about my graduation. Mom couldn't even remember what university I attended. But the minute you heard $2 million, suddenly I'm the golden child? Dad had the grace to look embarrassed. We've made mistakes, Robin, but we're trying to make up for them now. By redecorating my room, by parading me in front of your colleagues, I shook my head. That's not making up for anything. That's just using my success to make yourselves look good. A flash of anger crossed his face. That's a harsh assessment of your parents, don't you think? Maybe, but it's honest. I picked up my suitcase. I'd like to go to the airport now. Please. The car ride was silent, both of us lost in our own thoughts. As we approached the departures terminal, Dad finally spoke again. What can we do, Robin, to make this right? I looked at him, this man who had given me life, but never really known me. Get to know me, Dad. Not what I've achieved, not how much money I have. Me. Ask about my interests, my dreams, my work, not because it made me rich, but because it's what I love. Treat me like a person, not an accomplishment. He nodded slowly. I think we can try to do that. I hope so. I leaned over and kissed his cheek. Because I'd like to have a real relationship with you and Mom, but I'm done trying to earn your attention. From now on, it has to be freely given, or not at all. As I walked into the terminal, I felt lighter somehow, as if setting down a burden I'd carried for too long. I wasn't sure if my parents would rise to the challenge I'd set. Part of me doubted they could change patterns established over 2 decades. But for the first time, I realized it didn't matter as much as I'd thought. I had built a life for myself, a good life, filled with work I loved, friends who valued me, and achievements I was proud of. Whether my parents ever truly saw me or not, I knew my own worth now. And that, I realized, as I boarded the plane back to Boston, was the most valuable thing I'd gained from this weekend, far more valuable than any amount of money or belated parental approval. San Francisco greeted me with fog and a crisp breeze, so different from the humid heat of the Boston summer I'd left behind. 2 months had passed since the disastrous weekend at my parents' house, 2 months of change and forward momentum. I'd graduated, packed up my dorm room, said goodbye to Lydia, who was heading to Seattle for a job at Amazon, and moved across the country to start my new life at Nexus Tech. Now, standing on the balcony of my new apartment with its breathtaking view of the bay, I felt like I was finally where I belonged. The apartment was still half empty, boxes stacked in corners waiting to be unpacked. But it was mine. Space I'd chosen. Space I'd earned. My phone rang, displaying Rachel's name. We'd been talking more often since that weekend. Our relationship deepening now that we weren't living in the shadow of our parents' comparison. "Hey, Rach," I answered, watching the fog roll in over the Golden Gate Bridge. "How's California treating my millionaire sister?" Rachel's voice was warm with affection and teasing. Beautiful but expensive. "Even with my millions, this city is trying to bankrupt me." I laughed. "How's Harvard prep going?" "Intense. Orientation is next week, and I'm drowning in pre-reading." "They don't mess around here." She paused. "Have you talked to Mom and Dad lately?" The question sent a familiar pang through me. "Not really. Dad sent an email last week asking how the new job was going. Very generic, very polite." "And Mom?" "She sent me a link to an article about investing in property. No personal message, just the link." I sighed. I guess some things don't change. "Actually," Rachel said carefully, "I think they're trying, in their own clumsy way." "What do you mean?" "Mom asked me what kind of coding you do, specifically." She wanted to understand it better. This surprised me. "Really? Really? And Dad's been reading up on app development. I caught him with a Programming for Dummies book last weekend." I didn't know what to say. It was a small gesture, perhaps, but more effort than they'd shown in years. "They miss you, Robin," Rachel continued. "They regret how they treated you." "Did they actually say that?" I asked skeptically. "Not in so many words. You know how they are. Emotions aren't their strong suit. But I can tell." Rachel's voice softened. "They've got your MIT graduation photo on the mantle now, right next to my Harvard acceptance letter." Something in my chest loosened slightly. "Well, that's something, I guess." "Give them time. They're trying to learn how to see you, the real you, not just your achievements." Rachel cleared her throat. "Anyway, enough family drama. Tell me about Nexus Tech. Is it everything you hoped for?" I welcomed the change of subject, launching into stories about my first 2 weeks at the company, the brilliant colleagues, the challenging projects, the surprisingly good cafeteria food. As I talked, I moved from the balcony back inside, navigating around boxes to the kitchen where I poured myself a glass of wine. "It sounds perfect for you," Rachel said when I finished. "I'm really happy for you, Robin. You deserve this." "Thanks, Rach. That means a lot." I took a sip of wine, then added, "It's weird, you know. All those years competing for attention, feeling like I was in your shadow. And now we're both exactly where we're supposed to be. Different paths, same destination. Success on our own terms," Rachel agreed. "Although I still think your path was cooler. Who gets to be a millionaire before they're 25, says the Harvard MBA candidate," I countered with a laugh. After we hung up, I sat in the semi-darkness of my new apartment, thinking about what Rachel had said about our parents trying, in their own way, to understand me better. Part of me wanted to dismiss it. Too little, too late. But another part, a more hopeful part, wondered if real change was possible. My laptop chimed with an incoming email notification. I opened it to find a message from Dad, the subject line, "Simply checking in. Robin. I hope this finds you well settled in San Francisco. Your mother and I have been reading about the tech scene there. Quite impressive. I've attached an article about Nexus Tech that mentions some of their innovative approaches to file sharing. Is this related to what you'll be working on? I know things have been strained between us, and I want you to know that I've been reflecting on what you said at the airport. You were right. We've spent too many years seeing what we expected to see, not who you actually are. I can't promise we'll get it right overnight, but I want you to know we're trying. Your mother found some of your old programming projects in the basement. Science fair reports, coding competition certificates, things we should have paid more attention to at the time. She's been asking me questions I can't answer about what exactly you studied at MIT, what languages you code in, how your app actually worked. I was embarrassed to realize how little I knew about your passion. If you're willing, I'd like to learn. Not about the money or the success, though we're proud of that too, of course, but about the work itself. What excites you about it? What challenges you? What makes it worth pouring your heart into? We missed a lot, Robin. I don't know if we can make up for that, but I'd like to try if you'll let us. Love. Dad, P.S. Your mother wants to know if you found a good farmer's market near your new place. Apparently, she's been doing research about healthy eating for programmers and wants to send you some recipes. I told her you're perfectly capable of feeding yourself, but you know how she is when she gets an idea in her head. I read the email twice, surprised by the lump forming in my throat. It wasn't a grand declaration or a dramatic apology. It was small, tentative, imperfect, but it was something, an effort, a beginning. I clicked reply and began to type, Dad. Thanks for the email. I am settling in well, though still surrounded by boxes. Turns out, I have more stuff than I thought. The article you sent is interesting, though not exactly what I'll be working on. My team is developing a new secure file sharing protocol that would allow for better encryption while maintaining ease of use. Think of it like a more secure version of what Nextshare started as, but on a much larger scale. I appreciate what you said about trying to understand my work better. It means a lot. Maybe next time we talk I can try to explain what I do in non-technical terms. It's actually pretty exciting stuff, even if it seems like gibberish from the outside. And yes, there's a great farmer's market on Saturdays just a few blocks from my apartment. Tell Mom I found one with amazing strawberries. She always said, they were my favorite fruit as a kid. At least she got that right. Robin. I hesitated over the last line, wondering if it was too passive-aggressive. But then I decided to leave it. This new relationship, if it was going to develop, had to be built on honesty. That included acknowledging the past, even while trying to move beyond it. After sending the email, I found myself staring at the framed photo on my desk, one of the few decorative items I'd already unpacked. It was a picture of me at MIT graduation, standing alone in my cap and gown, my face alight with accomplishment and pride. I'd chosen it deliberately, a reminder that I'd achieved what I had on my own terms, without the validation I'd so desperately sought from my parents. But now, looking at it, I realized there was room on my desk for other photos too. Maybe someday there would be one of my family, not idealized or perfect, but real, with all our flaws and complications acknowledged. A family learning, slowly and imperfectly, to see each other as we truly were. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. How's the California dream? Regretting not coming to Seattle yet? I smiled and replied, perfect weather, incredible job, apartment with a view. What's to regret? How's life at the evil empire? Her response was immediate. Rainy, corporate, well compensated. You know, the usual Seattle experience. But seriously, how are you doing with everything? Family stuff still weighing on you? I considered the question carefully. Was it still weighing on me? Yes, in some ways. The hurt of years couldn't be erased by one email, or one tentative gesture of understanding. But the weight felt different now, less like a burden I carried alone, and more like a shared history I was learning to contextualize. It's complicated, I texted back, but I think I'm starting to make peace with it. They're trying in their way, and I'm learning that my worth isn't tied to their validation. Baby steps. Proud of you, came Lydia's reply. Now stop processing family drama and go explore your new city. That's an order. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Yes, ma'am. Mission accepted. Putting down my phone, I looked around at the boxes still waiting to be unpacked, at the unfamiliar city spread out beyond my windows, at the new life waiting to be built. There was something exhilarating about the blankness of it all, a canvas waiting for my particular colors, a story waiting to be written on my own terms. I changed into jeans and a light sweater, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Lydia was right. The unpacking could wait. Tonight was for exploring, for discovering, for beginning. As I stepped into the cool San Francisco evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. The future stretched before me, unmarked and full of possibility, not defined by who my parents thought I was, or by comparison to my sister, or even by the success I'd already achieved, but by who I was becoming. One choice, one day, one step, at a time. Monday morning arrived with a jolt as my alarm blared from the bedside table. My first official day at Nexus Tech. Despite having visited the campus twice during the interview process, butterflies danced in my stomach as I showered and dressed. I opted for dark jeans, a simple blouse, and my favorite programming joke t-shirt underneath. Professional enough for a tech company, but still true to myself. The Nexus Tech campus was a converted warehouse in South of Market, all exposed brick, and glass with sprawling open workspaces and cozy nooks designed for both collaboration and focused work. As I walked through the main entrance, a massive digital display welcomed new employees by name, my own flashing prominently among several others. "Robin Thompson," a cheerful voice called out as I approached the reception desk. A woman with bright, blue hair and horn-rimmed glasses waved me over. "I'm Zoe from HR. So glad you're finally here." She handed me a sleek company laptop, a security badge, and a welcome package. "Your team can't wait to meet you. They've been fangirling over your NextShare code for weeks." "Fangirling?" I repeated, both flattered and slightly embarrassed. "Totally. Alex, she's your team lead, practically threw a party when you accepted the offer. Something about elegant encryption protocols and beautifully optimized algorithms. You know, nerd love." Zoe winked conspiratorially. "Come on, I'll take you to your desk." As we walked through the open workspace, several people looked up and smiled in recognition. One young man actually gave me a thumbs up. It was a surreal experience, being recognized for my work, respected for my skills before I'd even proven myself in person. "This is Nexus East," Zoe explained as we passed various team clusters. "Security and encryption teams work here, which is where you'll be based. West Wing is front-end and UX, North is back-end infrastructure, and the basement, we call it the dungeon, though it's actually super nice, is where the hardware folks hide out." We stopped at a cluster of 6 desks arranged in a semicircle. 5 were clearly occupied, personalized with everything from action figures to plants to family photos. The 6th, sleek and empty, awaited me. "Team Firewall, your new developer has arrived," Zoe announced. 5 heads popped up from screens almost simultaneously. A woman with curly black hair pulled into a messy bun stood first, extending her hand. "Alex Chen, team lead. We are seriously excited to have you, Robin." Her grip was firm, her smile genuine. "Your work on NextShare's encryption protocol was brilliant. We've all studied it." I felt my cheeks warm. "Thanks. It's still weird hearing people talk about my code like that." "Get used to it," said a lanky guy with a British accent, rising to introduce himself. "Malcolm Pierce, Systems Architecture. Your dynamic key generation approach saved us weeks of work on Project Bastion." One by one, the others introduced themselves. Deepa, a security specialist with a dry sense of humor. Jordan, a non-binary back-end developer who immediately launched into questions about my experience with quantum-resistant algorithms. And Tariq, a UI designer who promised to make any interface I developed not just secure, but sexy. "Welcome to Team Firewall," Alex said once the introductions were complete. "We're responsible for developing the next generation of Nexus's security protocols. Your primary project will be leading the development of a secure file-sharing protocol that builds on what you started with NextShare." "My own project?" I couldn't hide my surprise. I thought I'd be joining an existing team effort. Alex's smile widened. Robin, we didn't hire you to be a cog in the machine. We hired you because you think differently, because you built something remarkable as a college student that major corporations couldn't figure out. You're here to lead, not follow. The confidence she placed in me was both exhilarating and terrifying. For a moment, I thought of my parents, how they'd never shown this kind of faith in my abilities, how it had taken financial success for them to even notice my capabilities. Here, among strangers who knew my work, I was already valued. Thank you, I said finally. I won't let you down. We know you won't, Alex replied. Now, let's get you set up and then dive into the project brief. We've got a meeting with the executive team this afternoon. They're eager to hear your initial thoughts on the protocol development. The morning flew by in a whirlwind of setup, paperwork, and initial briefings. By lunchtime, my head was swimming with information, but also buzzing with ideas. Team Firewall invited me to join them for lunch at a nearby cafe, insisting it was tradition for a new team member's first day. Over sandwiches and coffee, the conversation flowed easily from work to personal lives. I learned that Alex had a 5-year-old daughter, that Deepa competed in hackathons on weekends, that Malcolm was writing a cyberpunk novel in his spare time. They asked about my move from Boston, about MIT, about my experience developing NextShare. So is it weird? Jordan asked, stirring their iced tea. Being a millionaire before 25? I almost choked on my sandwich. How did you? Tech gossip spreads, Tariq explained with a grin. Especially when a college student sells an app for 7 figures. It's not weird exactly, I said after a moment's consideration. The money itself doesn't feel real sometimes. What's weird is how people treat you differently when they know. Like how? Deepa leaned forward, genuinely curious. I thought about my parents, about the shift in their attention once they'd known about the money. Like suddenly you're worth noticing when nothing about you has actually changed. Like your value is tied to your bank account rather than who you are. The table fell quiet for a moment. Well, for what it's worth, Alex said finally, we'd be just as excited to have you on the team if NextShare had sold for $2 instead of $2 million. Your code was that good. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Gratitude, recognition, belonging. Thanks. That means more than you know. Back at the office, I settled in at my new desk, customizing settings on my laptop and beginning to review the project documentation Alex had shared. The afternoon meeting with the executive team approached quickly, and despite my earlier confidence, I felt nervousness creeping in. These were seasoned industry veterans, people who had built one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. What if they found my ideas lacking? What if I couldn't live up to the promise they saw in my early work? As if sensing my anxiety, Malcolm rolled his chair over to my desk. First executive meeting jitters? I nodded, grateful for his perception. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who threw up before his first exec presentation. He grinned at my startled expression. True story. Bathroom 3rd floor about a year ago. But here's the thing. They hired you for your brain, Robin. They already believe in your ideas. This isn't an exam. It's a collaboration. His words eased some of the tension in my shoulders. Thanks, Malcolm. I needed that perspective. Anytime. That's what team means around here. We've got each other's backs. He rolled back to his desk, then added over his shoulder, Besides, Alex will tackle anyone who tries to give you a hard time. She once made the CTO cry during a code review. I laughed, the last of my nervousness dissipating. These people, my new colleagues, had faith in me not because of my bank account or my family connections, but because of what I could create, what I could contribute. It was, I realized, what I'd been seeking all along, recognition for my actual self, not for external markers of success. The executive meeting went better than I could have hoped. My ideas were met with enthusiasm, my concerns with thoughtful responses rather than dismissal. By the time we left the conference room, I had official approval to lead the development of what would become Nexus Shield, a secure file-sharing protocol that would form the backbone of the company's next generation of products. "Congratulations," Alex said as we walked back to our team area. "You just got greenlit for a multi-million-dollar development project on your first day. I think that's a company record." "I couldn't have done it without the team's input," I said. "Honestly. Especially your point about scalability challenges." Alex smiled. "That's why you're going to succeed here, Robin. You have the technical brilliance to impress, but you also understand that great work is rarely done alone." She paused at her desk. "We're going for drinks after work to celebrate your first day. You in?" "Absolutely," I agreed, feeling a rush of gratitude for this ready-made community that had welcomed me so openly. As the workday wound down, I found myself checking my phone, a habit I'd developed since moving, always half expecting, half hoping for messages from my family. There was nothing from my parents, but a text from Rachel had come through during the meeting. "First day at the big job. Knock 'em dead, genius twin. Call me tonight with all the details." I smiled, typing a quick reply. "Day 1 success. Heading out for team drinks now. We'll call later." As I set my phone down, I realized I hadn't thought about my parents' approval once during the presentation. I hadn't imagined their reaction or mentally composed how I would tell them about my success. For perhaps the first time, I had achieved something without immediately wondering if it would finally be enough to make them see me. It was a small realization, but a profound one. My validation was coming from within now, from my own satisfaction with my work, from the respect of peers who understood its value. The desperate need for parental approval that had driven me for so long was beginning to loosen its grip. Team drinks extended into dinner, then dessert, as conversation flowed, easily from work to movies to life philosophies. By the time I returned to my apartment that night, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't expected to find so quickly in my new city. Settling onto my couch with a cup of tea, I called Rachel as promised. "Well?" she demanded without preamble. "Are you the queen of Silicon Valley yet?" I laughed. "Give me at least a week for total domination." But seriously, it was amazing. They're letting me lead a major security protocol development. My own project, my own team. "Look at you, tech superstar." Rachel's pride came through clearly in her voice. "Have you told Mom and Dad?" The question gave me pause. "No. I thought about it, but I don't know. It feels different now. Like I don't need their validation the way I used to." "That's healthy," Rachel said approvingly. "Though for what it's worth, Dad asked about your first day when he called me. This evening? He did?" This surprised me. "What did you tell him?" "That he should ask you himself." Rachel's tone was gentle but firm. "I'm not going to be the go-between anymore, Robin. If they want to know about your life, they need to make the effort to be part of it directly." I felt a surge of love for my sister, for her unwavering support even as she set healthy boundaries. "Thank you for everything, Rach, for seeing me even when they didn't." "Always," she replied simply. "That's what sisters are for." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my new apartment, reflecting on the day, the welcoming team, the exciting work ahead, the sense of being valued for my true self. Outside my window, San Francisco twinkled with 1,000 lights, a city of possibility and reinvention. I pulled out my laptop and began a fresh email to my parents. Not seeking approval, not desperately trying to prove my worth, but simply sharing my life with people who, despite everything, were still part of it. Dear Mom and Dad, today was my first day at Nexus Tech. I've been assigned to lead the development of a new security protocol that will help protect users' data across the company's platforms. My team is brilliant and welcoming, and the executives have already approved my project proposal. I'm enclosing a link to an article about what Nexus is working on, in case you're interested in understanding more about what I do. It explains some of the concepts in non-technical terms. I hope you're both well. Give my love to Aunt Susan when you see her this weekend. Robin. Simple. Factual. Neither seeking nor refusing connection, but offering it on new, more balanced terms. I hit send before I could overthink it, then closed my laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new code to write, new problems to solve. And I would face them as this new version of myself. A woman who knew her worth came from within, who didn't need external validation to know she was valuable. It wasn't a perfect resolution to 22 years of feeling invisible. But it was a beginning. My beginning on my own terms. And that, I decided as I prepared for bed on my first night as a Nexus Tech developer, was more than enough. 3 months flew by in a blur of coding, team meetings, product development, and gradually settling into my new life in San Francisco. What had once been an empty apartment was now a home, decorated in clean, modern lines with splashes of color that made me smile. My team at Nexus had become more than colleagues. They were friends, dinner companions, weekend hiking partners. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere, accepted for exactly who I was. The Nexus Shield project was progressing ahead of schedule. My team had developed the core encryption protocols, and initial testing was showing promising results. The executives were pleased, my team was motivated, and I was finding my stride as a project leader. Communication with my parents had settled into a new pattern, polite, somewhat distant emails exchanged every week or two. They asked surface level questions about my work, my apartment, my adjustment to California. I provided equally surface level answers. It wasn't the deep connection part of me still yearned for, but it was civil, manageable, and far less painful than the years of being overlooked. Then, one Tuesday morning in late October, an email arrived that disturbed the careful equilibrium I'd established. Robin, your father and I have been doing some thinking. It's been months since we've seen you, and the holidays are approaching. We'd like to visit you in San Francisco for Thanksgiving. We thought it would be nice to see your new home, your workplace, and experience your new life with you. Rachel says she can join us as well, so it would be a full family Thanksgiving. What do you think? We could stay at a hotel nearby, of course. We wouldn't want to impose. Let us know if this would work for you. We miss you. Love. Mom. I stared at the email for a long time, conflicting emotions churning inside me. The thought of my parents in my space, in the new life I'd built independent of their approval, sent anxiety spiraling through me. Yet there was something in the tone of the email, a tentativeness, a respect for boundaries that was new and noteworthy. Called Rachel during my lunch break. Did you know about this Thanksgiving plan? I asked, without preamble when she answered. Hello to you too, sister dear, Rachel replied dryly. And yes, they mentioned it. I told them it was entirely up to you. What do you think? Be honest. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Honestly? I think they're trying, Robin. In their awkward, emotionally stunted way. Dad's been reading books about your industry. Mom's joined some online forum for parents of tech workers, which is hilarious and slightly horrifying, by the way. But do you think they've actually changed? Or do they just want access to their successful daughter now that I'm established? I think it's probably a bit of both, Rachel admitted. Old habits die hard, but I also think they genuinely regret how they treated you. They talk about you differently now, with respect, with interest. I sighed, rubbing my temples where a headache was forming. I've built something good here, Rach. A life that's mine, where I'm valued for who I am. I don't want them to come in and make me feel like that insecure, invisible kid again. Then don't let them, Rachel said simply. You're not that kid anymore, Robin. You're a successful, confident woman who knows her worth. Maybe it's time to let them see that person, on your terms. And if they can't handle it, if they fall back into old patterns, then you show them the door, Rachel replied without hesitation. Your life, your rules now. After we hung up, I walked to the small park near Nexus's campus, needing fresh air and space to think. My sister was right. I wasn't powerless anymore. I could set boundaries, establish expectations, protect the sense of self I'd worked so hard to build. But was I ready to test that strength against the people who had the greatest power to undermine it? That evening, I discussed the situation with my team during our weekly dinner at a local Thai restaurant. They'd all heard stories about my family dynamics over the past months and had become something of a sounding board and support system. Invite them, Deepa said decisively after I explained my dilemma. But make it a public holiday dinner, not a private one. What do you mean? I asked, pushing my pad thai around my plate. Reserve a restaurant for Thanksgiving dinner. Somewhere nice but public. That way, you have a built-in time limit, witnesses, and a neutral territory. She smiled wickedly. Plus, they'll have to behave because strangers are watching. And invite us to meet them, Alex added. Not for the whole dinner, but maybe for drinks before or after. Let them see the community you've built, the respect you have here. Show them your life on your terms, Malcolm nodded. Let them be visitors to your world, not the other way around. And if it goes badly, Jordan added, we'll stage an emergency that requires your immediate attention. You guys would do that for me? I felt touched by their protectiveness. Robin, Tariq said seriously, you've pulled 3 all-nighters in the past month to help us meet deadlines. You brought soup to my apartment when I had the flu. Of course, we'd fake an emergency to save you from awkward family dynamics. Their support bolstered my courage. That night, I replied to my mother's, Mel, Mom and Dad, thank you for the Thanksgiving invitation. I would be open to having you visit, with a few parameters to make it comfortable for everyone. I'll reserve a table at a nice restaurant for Thanksgiving dinner. My apartment is still quite small for hosting, and this way no one has to cook. I can recommend several good hotels within walking distance. Rachel is welcome, of course, and I'd also like you to meet some of my colleagues or friends while you're here. They've become an important part of my life in San Francisco. Please let me know if this arrangement works for you and which days you're planning to be in town. My schedule at Nexus is quite busy, but I can arrange to take some time off if I know in advance. Robin polite, direct, and boundary setting. I felt a small surge of pride as I hit send. This was the new me, the me who didn't desperately seek approval, who didn't sacrifice my own needs to please others, who knew my own worth independent of external validation. Their response came the following morning. Dear Robin, that all sounds lovely. We appreciate your making time for us in your busy schedule. A restaurant for Thanksgiving is perfect. Your mother has been wanting to try California cuisine anyway, and we would be delighted to meet your friends and colleagues. We're planning to arrive Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving and stay until Sunday. Your father has found a hotel just a few blocks from the address you've listed for your apartment. Would Thursday evening work for the Thanksgiving dinner? And perhaps we could see your office on Friday, if that's allowed? We're looking forward to seeing your new life and learning more about the work you're doing. Your father has been reading about encryption protocols, though I'm not sure he understands much of it. And I've joined an online group for parents of tech workers to better understand the industry culture. With love, Mom and Dad. I read the email twice, surprised by its respectful tone and the effort it described. My parents reading about encryption, Mom joining an online forum. These were not actions taken by people who didn't care. They might be fumbling, imperfect attempts, but they were attempts nonetheless. Over the next few weeks, plans for the Thanksgiving visit solidified. I reserved a table at an upscale restaurant with views of the bay, arranged for my team to meet. My parents for pre-dinner drinks, and even gave my apartment a thorough cleaning. Rachel called frequently with updates on our parents' preparations. Apparently, they were treating this visit like a diplomatic mission to a foreign country, complete with research and careful planning. Dad bought a book called Understanding Your adult children, Rachel reported, laughter in her voice. And Mom's asking me if you prefer flowers or wine as a hostess gift. I told her you're more of a premium chocolate kind of girl. They're really trying, aren't they? I said, a mix of hope and wariness coloring my tone. They really are, Rachel confirmed. Just give them a chance, Robin, not for their sake, but for yours. I think you might be surprised. The day before Thanksgiving, my apartment buzzer rang unexpectedly. I opened the door to find a delivery person holding a large, beautifully wrapped package. Inside was a sleek, professional-grade telescope with an accompanying note. Robin. We remembered how you used to love stargazing when you were little. Always. The first one to spot constellations on our camping trips. San Francisco fog notwithstanding, we thought you might enjoy reconnecting with that old passion in your new home. We've learned that sometimes the most remarkable things are visible to those who take the time to look closely. See you tomorrow. Mom and Dad. I sat on my couch, stunned, the telescope box open before me. This wasn't an expensive piece of jewelry or a generic gift. This was something specific to me, to a childhood interest I'd almost forgotten myself. They had remembered something about me, the real me, not the successful developer or the millionaire app creator, but the little girl who had loved tracing. Orion's belt in the night sky. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this visit could be the beginning of something new between us. Not a magical healing of all past hurts, but a foundation for a more authentic relationship moving forward. As I carefully set up the telescope on my balcony, positioning it despite knowing San Francisco's famous fog would likely obscure any celestial views, I felt something shift inside me, a willingness to be seen, not just for my achievements, but for all the complex, contradictory, beautiful parts that made me who I was. And if my parents were finally ready to truly see me, well, I decided I was ready to be seen. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and crisp, a rarity in fog-prone San Francisco. From my balcony, I could see the Golden Gate Bridge standing proud against the blue sky, promising a picture-perfect day for my parents' visit. I'd taken the day off work to prepare, though prepare mostly meant pacing my apartment, rearranging flowers, and trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach. My phone pinged with a message from Alex. Team Firewall standing by for emergency extraction if needed. Just text code RED and we'll manufacture a crisis of biblical proportions. I smiled, grateful for their support. Thanks, hoping it won't come to that, but good to know I have backup. Another message came through, this one from Rachel. Just landed. Parents surprisingly calm. Mom only mentioned your wasted potential twice on the flight, which is practically a miracle. Despite my nervousness, I laughed. Progress. See you soon. At precisely 4 p.m., my doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my simple but elegant burgundy dress, and opened the door. My parents stood there, looking somehow both familiar and like strangers. Mom had a new haircut, shorter and more modern than her usual conservative style. Dad seemed to have lost weight, his face leaner than I remembered. They were well-dressed but not overly formal, and both wore expressions of nervous anticipation that mirrored my own. Behind them, Rachel gave me an encouraging thumbs up. "Robin," Mom said, her voice wavering slightly, "you look beautiful." "Thanks, Mom. You too." I stepped back, gesturing them inside. "Please come in." They entered my apartment with the careful movements of people entering a museum, looking around. With genuine interest at the space I'd created for myself, Mom's gaze lingered on my bookshelf, filled with technical manuals and science fiction novels. Dad moved toward the balcony, noticing the telescope they'd sent. "You set it up," he said, pleasure evident in his voice. "Of course." It was a thoughtful gift. I joined him at the balcony door. I haven't had much chance to use it yet. San Francisco fog is notorious, but we got lucky with clear skies today. Perhaps we could try it later tonight, he suggested, then quickly added, if you'd... Like, of course. This tentative, careful version of my father was new to me. The dad I remembered had always been certain, authoritative, definitive in his opinions and plans. This man seeking my approval, careful not to presume, was someone I didn't quite recognize. I'd like that, I said simply. Rachel broke the slight awkwardness by exclaiming over my view, asking about neighborhood restaurants, and generally playing her familiar role as family social lubricant. I was grateful for her presence, for the buffer she provided while we all adjusted to this new dynamic. Your place is lovely, Robin, Mom said, running her fingers along the edge of my desk, where dual monitors displayed complex code in sleep mode. Very you. Very me? I repeated, unable to keep the surprise from my voice. You think this is very me? Mom looked momentarily flustered. Well, yes, clean lines, practical, but with these unexpected touches of color and warmth, like those geometric paintings or that unusual plant arrangement. Organized but creative. That's always been you, hasn't it? I stared at her, genuinely stunned. Had she always seen these aspects of my personality, or was this a recent observation? Either way, the fact that she could articulate something so specific about who I was, something beyond my achievements or financial status, felt significant. Thank you, I managed. I've worked hard to make it feel like home. It shows, Dad said, rejoining us from the balcony. He glanced at his watch. What time are we meeting your colleagues? We don't want to be late. We have reservations at the restaurant bar at 5:30, I explained. Team Firewall, that's my work group, will join us for drinks before dinner, then they'll head out, and we'll have our Thanksgiving meal at 7. Team Firewall, Dad repeated with a small smile. Sounds important. It is, I said simply. We're developing next-generation security protocols that could significantly change how data is protected online. To my surprise, Dad nodded with what appeared to be genuine understanding. I've been reading about encryption challenges in distributed systems. Fascinating stuff, though admittedly much of it goes over my head. Rachel caught my eye from behind our parents, her expression clearly saying, "See, they're trying." The pre-dinner drinks with my team went better than I could have expected. Alex, Malcolm, Deepa, Jordan, and Tariq were on their best behavior, charming and professional, while still letting their personalities shine through. My parents, for their part, asked thoughtful questions about our work, listened attentively to explanations, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know the people who were important to me. Your daughter is a rock star, Alex told my parents as cocktails were served. I've been in this industry 15 years, and I rarely see the kind of intuitive problem-solving Robin brings to the table. The encryption protocol she designed for Nextshare was brilliant, Malcolm added. We've built our entire new security framework on its principles. And she brings cookies to marathon coding sessions, Tariq chimed in with a grin. Homemade cookies. That's real leadership. I felt my cheeks warm at their praise, but what really struck me was my parents' reaction. They weren't dismissing these compliments or immediately changing the subject to Rachel's accomplishments. Instead, Mom was smiling with what looked like genuine pride, and Dad was listening intently, his expression thoughtful. We're just beginning to understand the significance of Robin's work, Dad admitted. Technical fields weren't familiar territory for us, but we're learning. Better late than never, Mom added, with a self-awareness that surprised me. She turned to me. We should have made more effort to understand your passions earlier, Robin. That's on us. The simple acknowledgement that they had failed to see me to understand what mattered to me was more meaningful than any elaborate apology could have been. It wasn't everything, but it was something. By 7 p.m., my team had gracefully departed, but not before reminding me that Code Red was just a text away, and we were seated at our table for Thanksgiving dinner. The restaurant offered a gourmet, take-on traditional Thanksgiving fare, heritage turkey, cranberry compote with orange zest, stuffing elevated with artisanal bread and wild mushrooms. As we settled in with glasses of wine, I found myself searching for safe topics of conversation, still wary of falling into old, painful patterns. But before I could speak, Dad surprised me by raising his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, his voice carrying a gravity I wasn't expecting. "To Robin, not just for her professional success, which is remarkable, but for her courage, her resilience, and her willingness to give us another chance despite our significant shortcomings as parents." Mom raised her glass as well, her eyes suspiciously bright. "To Robin, we are so proud of the woman you've become, not because of us, but often in spite of us." Rachel completed the toast. "To my brilliant sister, who has always been extraordinary, even when others failed to notice." I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at their words. This explicit acknowledgement of their past failures, this public recognition of my worth beyond my accomplishments, it was what I had needed for so long without being able to articulate it. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. "That means a lot to me." As we began our meal, the conversation flowed more naturally than I could have imagined. My parents asked about my projects at Nexus, and to my surprise, they had done enough research to ask informed questions. Dad had actually read articles about encryption protocols, and Mom had genuine questions about workplace culture in tech companies. "We've been trying to educate ourselves," Mom explained, when I expressed surprise at her knowledge of Silicon Valley work perks. "There's actually a support group online for parents of tech workers. We share articles, resources, trying to understand this world better. Most of the members are struggling to explain to their parents what exactly they do for a living," Dad added with a self-deprecating smile. "We're trying not to be those parents anymore." "I appreciate the effort," I said honestly. "It means a lot that you're trying to understand my world." There was a moment of comfortable silence as we enjoyed our meal. Then Mom set down her fork, her expression becoming more serious. "Robin, we owe you an apology. A real one, not just vague acknowledgments of past mistakes." She glanced at Dad, who nodded encouragingly. "We failed you as parents. We didn't see you, the real you, with all your gifts and talents and wonderful uniqueness. We were too busy projecting our own expectations, our own limited understanding of success." Dad picked up where she left off. "We treated you as less than your sister, when the truth is you were just different. Different interests, different strengths. We didn't know how to value what we didn't understand. And that was our failure, not yours. We're not asking for forgiveness right away," Mom continued. "We know it will take time to rebuild trust, but we want you to know that we see you now. We're trying to anyway, and we are so, so proud of the woman you've become." I sat in stunned silence, the carefully constructed walls I'd built around my heart developing hairline fractures. This was the apology I'd never expected to receive, specific, unqualified, taking full responsibility without excuses. "I don't know what to say," I admitted finally. "I've spent so long trying to make you see me, to make you proud. And when that didn't work, I tried to convince myself I didn't care anymore." "But you did care," Rachel said gently. "We all care what our parents think, even when we wish we didn't." "Yes," I acknowledged. "I did care. I still do, though I've learned to find validation elsewhere." I looked directly at my parents. I can't pretend the past didn't happen. There were years, decades, where I felt invisible in our family. That hurt doesn't just disappear because you're trying harder now. "We understand," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're not asking for a clean slate, just a chance to do better moving forward." I considered their words, feeling the weight of years of disappointment and hurt balanced against this new tentative hope. I think I'd like that. To try, at least. But I need you to understand that I've built a life here that I'm proud of. A life that doesn't revolve around seeking your approval anymore." "As it should be," Mom said firmly. "We want to be part of your life, Robin. But we don't expect to be the center of it. We just want the chance to know the amazing woman you've become, on your terms. The rest of the dinner passed in a strange new harmony. Not perfect, not without moments of tension or old habits briefly resurfacing, but fundamentally different from any family gathering I could remember. We talked about my work, about Rachel's studies at Harvard, about my parents' growing interest in understanding technology. For the first time, it felt like a conversation among 4 adults, rather than 2 parents dictating and judging. After dinner, we walked back to my apartment, the clear night perfect for the stargazing Dad had suggested earlier. On my balcony, Dad expertly adjusted the telescope while Mom brought out cups of hot chocolate that Rachel had helped her prepare in my kitchen. "There," Dad said, stepping back from the telescope. "I found Cassiopeia. Do you remember that one, Robin? It was always your favorite when you were little." The fact that he remembered this small detail, a preference I'd expressed during family camping trips when I was no more than 8 or 9, touched me deeply. "I remember," I said, stepping forward to look through the telescope. The familiar W-shaped constellation came into view, bright against the dark sky. "You used to tell me stories about the queen who was too vain about her beauty, and you always argued that she couldn't have been that vain if she had a whole constellation." "Named after her," Dad recalled with a smile. "You were a logical child even then." We took turns at the telescope, finding familiar constellations and discovering new ones with the help of an astronomy app on Rachel's phone. It was a simple activity, but it felt significant, a reconnection to earlier, less complicated times, before expectations and disappointments had created such distance between us. As the evening wound down and my parents prepared to return to their hotel, Mom hesitated at the door, then impulsively pulled me into a hug. "Thank you for today," she whispered, "for giving us this chance." I returned the hug, surprised by how natural it felt after years of emotional distance. "Thank you for seeing me," I replied simply. After they left, Rachel lingered, helping me clean up the few dishes from our hot chocolate. "So," she said, watching me carefully, "that was not terrible?" I laughed, the tension of the day finally releasing. "Not terrible at all. Actually kind of nice. They've been working hard on this, Robin. Therapy, reading books, those online forums. They really want to fix things with you." "I can see that," I acknowledged. "And I appreciate it. I'm just cautious. Old patterns are hard to break." Rachel nodded. "Absolutely. And you should be cautious. But also, maybe a little hopeful? They're not perfect. They never will be. But they're trying. Really trying." "I know." I sat on the couch, suddenly exhausted by the emotional intensity of the day. "Do you think people can really change fundamentally, Rach? Or are we all just who we are, making minor adjustments at the margins?" Rachel considered this, joining me on the couch. I think people can't change who they are at their core, but they can become more aware, more intentional. They can choose to focus on different aspects of themselves, to prioritize differently." She squeezed my hand. "Mom and Dad were always capable of being attentive, supportive parents. They just didn't realize they weren't being those things for you. Now they do." I nodded slowly, processing her words. "It's strange. For so long, all I wanted was their attention, their approval. And now that I have it, I realize it doesn't define me the way I thought it would. I'm glad they're trying, but my worth doesn't depend on their recognition anymore." "That's the real victory here," Rachel said softly. "Not that they finally see you, but that you finally see yourself clearly, with or without their validation." She was right, I realized. The real transformation wasn't in my parents, though their efforts were genuine and appreciated. The real change was in me, in my understanding of my own worth, my own value independent of external validation. As Rachel left for the night, promising to bring our parents by again the following day for a proper tour of my neighborhood, I found myself drawn back to the balcony, to the telescope pointing at the night sky. I adjusted it slightly, finding Cassiopeia again, the vain queen who had been punished by the gods, forced to circle the celestial pole forever, sometimes upright, sometimes upside down. There was something apt about the metaphor, I thought. My relationship with my parents had been turned upside down, then right side up again, navigating its own celestial path through misunderstanding, hurt, and now, perhaps, healing. I didn't know what the future held for us, whether this new awareness could be sustained, whether old patterns might reassert themselves over time. But I did know that I was no longer the desperate, validation-seeking daughter I had been. I had built a life, a career, a community that valued me for exactly who I was, and that more than any parental recognition was the real measure of my growth. The remainder of my parents' visit passed in a blur of sightseeing, team dinners, and increasingly comfortable conversations. We toured Nexus Tech's campus, where my parents listened attentively to my explanations of our current projects, asked thoughtful questions, and beamed with obvious pride when my colleagues praised my work. We explored San Francisco's landmarks, shared meals at my favorite local restaurants, and even spent a relaxed evening playing board games in my apartment, something we hadn't done as a family since Rachel and I were teenagers. By Sunday morning, when the time came for them to depart, I was surprised by the genuine regret I felt at seeing them go. Not because I needed more time to prove myself or seek their approval, but because I had genuinely enjoyed their company, perhaps for the first time as an adult. "This was wonderful, Robin," Mom said, as we waited for their airport shuttle outside my apartment building. "Thank you for letting us into your life here." "It's been illuminating," Dad added. "Seeing you in your element, doing work you love, surrounded by people who value you. It's helped us understand you better." "It's helped me understand you better, too," I admitted. "I think I needed to see that you could make this effort, that you could try to see me as I am." Rachel, who had an evening flight back to Boston, hugged me fiercely. "See? Growth all around." As the shuttle arrived and goodbyes were exchanged, Mom hesitated, then pressed a small package into my hands. "Just a little something to remember this visit. Open it later." I waved until the shuttle disappeared around the corner, then climbed the stairs back to my apartment, the package weighing curiously in my hand. Inside, I found a delicate silver photo frame containing a picture I hadn't seen before. Me at about 7 years old, standing in our backyard, holding up a homemade circuit board with obvious pride. My smile was wide, gap-toothed, absolutely radiant with the joy of creation. A note tucked into the frame read, "We found this while going through old photos. You had just built your first electronic project from a kit your uncle gave you. You were so proud, so excited to show everyone. We should have recognized then what we see clearly now, your brilliant mind, your creative spirit, your determination. We're sorry it took us so long to truly see you, Robin. We're so proud of who you were then and who you've become now. Love, Mom and Dad." I sat on my couch, studying the image of my younger self, a girl already coding her own path, already finding joy in creation and problem solving, long before external validation or financial success entered the picture. There was something healing in seeing this evidence that the essence of who I was had been there all along, even if not everyone had recognized it. Rachel found me still holding the photo when she returned from seeing our parents off. "What's that?" she asked, joining me on the couch. I handed her the frame and watched as she studied it, a smile spreading across her face. "I remember this. That little circuit board that lit up when you connected the wires right. You were obsessed with it. I have no memory of this photo being taken," I admitted. "But apparently Mom and Dad kept it all these years." "They kept a lot of things, Robin. They just didn't always know what they meant." Rachel set the photo down gently. "So, verdict on the great Thanksgiving reconciliation experiment?" I considered the question carefully. "Hopeful, I think. Not fixed, not perfect, but hopeful. They're trying in ways I didn't think they were capable of, and I'm discovering I'm more capable of forgiveness than I thought I was. Growth all around, Rachel repeated her earlier assessment. What about you? I asked suddenly. All this focus on me and my feelings, how has it been for you, watching this whole drama unfold? Rachel looked surprised by the question. Honestly, mostly relief. It's been exhausting being the bridge between you and them all these years, trying to translate both sides to each other. I'm glad you're all finally speaking the same language. I never thought about how it affected you, I realized. Always. Being in the middle, always being the good daughter while I was the resentful one. Hey, I had my own resentments, Rachel admitted. Being the perfect daughter came with its own pressures, its own impossible standards. The difference was, I played along with the system while you rebelled against it. We were both coping. In our own ways, I reflected. Exactly. But now maybe we can all just be. Without the roles, without the competition, without the constant need for validation or approval. She grinned. Just two brilliant sisters, and they're slowly evolving. Parents, figuring it out as they go. The next morning, as I returned to work at Nexus Tech, I felt different, lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for too long. My team noticed it too, commenting on my relaxed demeanor, the new energy I brought to our morning meeting. Successful family Thanksgiving? Alex asked as we reviewed project timelines. Surprisingly so, I admitted. They're trying, really trying to understand me, to see me. And how does that feel? She pressed gently. I considered the question. Good, but also not as necessary as I thought it would be. I gestured around the conference room at my team, my work, my chosen life. I've built something valuable here, something that's mine. Their approval is nice, but it's not what defines me anymore. Alex nodded approvingly. That's the real victory, not winning their validation, but realizing you don't need it to know your worth. Exactly. I smiled, turning back to the project, bored. Now, about these encryption protocols. The conversation shifted back to work, to the challenges and opportunities of the project I was leading. As I guided my team through complex technical discussions, proposing solutions, answering questions, making decisions, I felt fully present in my own life, not haunted by the past, not desperate for validation, but simply engaged in work I loved, with people who respected me. Later that day, an email arrived from my parents, thanking me again for the weekend and inviting me to visit Chicago for Christmas. If your schedule allows, completely understanding if it doesn't. The lack of pressure, the respect for my separate life and priorities, spoke volumes about the changes they were trying to make. I replied with a tentative yes, suggesting a shorter visit between Christmas and New Year's, when Nexus would be on holiday break. I also attached a recent article about our security protocol development that had been published in a technical journal, noting that this explains our current project in somewhat accessible terms if you're interested. Their reply came quickly. We've already read it. Your father has been checking that journal regularly since your team mentioned it at dinner. We didn't understand all of it, but we're learning. So proud of you. A simple exchange, but meaningful in its demonstration of ongoing effort, of continued attempts to bridge the gap between our worlds. As I closed my laptop that evening, I noticed the framed childhood photo my parents had given me, now placed on my desk beside my MIT graduation picture. Two versions of the same person, the curious child with her first circuit board and the accomplished woman with her prestigious degree. Both valuable, both worthy of recognition, both fundamental parts of who I was. For so long, I had felt like the invisible twin, the overlooked daughter, defined by what I lacked: parental attention, validation, recognition. Now, standing in my San Francisco apartment, surrounded by evidence of the life I'd built for myself, I realized I was no longer defined by absence, but by presence, by the work I created, the relationships I nurtured, the self I had become. The journey with my parents wasn't over. There would be setbacks, old patterns that resurfaced, moments of frustration or disappointment on both sides. But something fundamental had shifted, both in them and in me. They were learning to see me more clearly, and I was learning that being seen by them while healing was no longer essential to my sense of self. I was Robin Thompson, MIT graduate, innovative developer, valued team leader, loyal friend, loving sister, and now perhaps daughter in a healthier, more balanced family dynamic, not invisible at all, but vibrantly, undeniably present in my own life. In the end, that was the real achievement, far more valuable than any app, any degree, any bank account. Balance. I had coded my own path, just as Lydia's graduation gift had encouraged me to do. And that path had led me here, to this moment of self-recognition, this understanding that my worth had never depended on others seeing it. It had been there all along, waiting for me to claim it for myself.